You're going to hear people say that they won, and we lost because making your voices heard forced us to change our plans. Oh, those people will only be half right. They won, and so did we. Did the executives at Wizards of the Coast want their official response to sound like a villainous monologue? Because that's how villains monologue. Fortunately, the good-hearted leaders of other innovative RPG companies are already doing the right things for their games and their communities. And I'm going to share my top 2 picks for fantasy D20 RPGs that are easy to learn for anyone who has played or run D&D 5e. Because I'm Bob, this is where we learn how to have more fun playing RPGs together. And while I go over some additional criteria for how I picked these 2 games, please leave a comment below either guessing the 2 games that I'm going to talk about or telling me your favorite fantasy D20 RPG besides D&D. Remember, your support with likes and comments and sharing videos like this is how we show the wider D&D focused YouTube community, both viewers and creators, that it is fun to explore and play lots of RPGs. And who knows, if you share this video with your group, maybe one of them will decide to run one of these games and you'll get to be a player for once. Now, both of these 2 games not only follow a broadly medieval fantasy theme and rely on a d20, but they both let you play as humans, elves, dwarves, and halflings. They are class-based systems, including fighters, wizards, clerics, and rogues, aka thieves, that's a hint. Also, they are built for a mix of combat, exploration, and social encounters and use familiar D&D terminology, like hit points, armor class, spell levels, DC, checks, saving throws, and critical hits. So they both share the complete mechanical framework of D&D, but build on it in their own unique ways. And after my 2 top picks, I'm going to share a bunch of honorable mentions at the end, including the top suggestion from this community, according to my recent community post where I asked for more RPG recommendations. Okay, number 1, and I kind of can't believe I'm saying this, but Pathfinder 2e, you got me, comment section. Pathfinder 2nd Edition is easily one of the closest, if not the closest, D&D analog system out there right now. As you may know, Pathfinder 1e was almost like a clone of the D&D 3.5 system with its fair share of new content and overhauled features for many of the classes. Pathfinder holds onto even more D&D terminology, including spell slots, feats, conditions, proficiency, attack of opportunity, and a ton of familiar monsters. Today, however, Pathfinder 2e has also innovated in even more ways than its predecessor, as people have endlessly told me in the comments of my D&D videos for the last several years. One fun distinction is the streamlined ABC character creation process for ancestry, background, class. This works like D&D's race background class, with one main difference being how you determine your character's ability scores. You can roll dice, but the default method is a carefully balanced system of boosts and flaws, basically bonuses and penalties to each ability coming not only from your ancestry, like racial bonuses in D&D 5e, but also from your background and your class. However, if you like D&D 5e's variant rule of freely choosing those racial ability bonuses, Pathfinder offers the same thing for its ancestries. And if you like how D&D 5e supplements, official and third party, have provided more and more character options over time, you'll love Pathfinder because there are so many flavorful options baked into the core rules. But the most intriguing Pathfinder mechanic to me has to be its famous 3-action economy system. On every turn, every player character gets 3 actions, but those actions can be movement, attacking, casting a spell, or any number of the other things you can usually do on your turn in D&D. Not to scare all the GMs out there, this doesn't mean your players get 3 awesome attacks every turn, because attacking over and over in the same turn incurs a penalty to the second attack roll, and so on. And that's what I love about this concept, how it seems to work around a common D&D problem of feeling like you didn't get to do anything on your turn because you missed your one and only attack. Now, the disclaimer for me recommending Pathfinder 2e is that I've only read a little bit of the system from its free rules online, but I've watched plenty of YouTube videos about it on channels like No Nat Ones and Icarus Games, and from my perspective, it's very much like D&D 5e with a lot more options, more intricate mechanics, and much Much kinder executives leading the organization. Seriously, their publisher, Paizo, is right now standing at the helm of a bunch of other RPG publishers in creating a new, truly open and truly irrevocable open game license to protect the creator communities of multiple RPG systems, not just their own. So at the very least, I'm looking forward to picking up their starter set box soon just to show my support. Then who knows, maybe I'll finally listen to all those YouTube comments and play Pathfinder. But whatever RPG you're playing, or especially if you're building your own world, you gotta take notes, and you must keep those notes organized. So I recommend making a free account with our sponsor, Campfire. Campfire uses a corkboard style interface so you can create however you want, but keep it flexible and keep all your work safely stored in the cloud. Lay out your ideas for NPCs, items, monsters, locations. You can even nest maps within maps to quickly move between locations. Use their branching timeline to plot out your campaign or your world's entire history. And optionally, share only the parts you want to with your players. Aside from all the great organizational tools, Campfire also offers tons of educational resources to hone your skills and improve the quality of your creations. Plus, Campfire has an offline desktop app and a free mobile app for easy access anywhere when you have that sudden moment of inspiration. More than 150,000 people use Campfire to organize, improve, and showcase their work, and again, it's free to use with optional upgrades for larger projects. Check it out through the link below so they know who sent you. Now, while Pathfinder is certainly easy to learn for D&D lovers, personally, I'm just not really into having all the options that Pathfinder offers. So one thing I like about this next game is that while they publish a lot of short modules for it, they have only published a single supplemental source book in over a decade since the core rulebook has been out. And I think they finally have one new monster supplement coming soon as well. That information might have spoiled this reveal, but my current go-to fantasy D20 class-based RPG that isn't D&D 5e is a Dungeon Crawl Classics. First, don't be intimidated by the size of this rulebook. It's actually over 100 pages shorter than Pathfinder 2e, and it combines the Player's Handbook, Dungeon Master's Guide, and Monster Manual all into this one core rulebook. And for real, when I first saw DCC back in 2017 at a bookstore, I thought, wow, this looks like a cool game, but it's a huge book and it must be super complicated. Huge mistake. And now that I've read it a few times and I've run one extremely fun session of DCC, I wish I had bought this book years ago. For the last few months, since even before all this OGL mess began, I've been planning a new homebrew world for a sandbox campaign using this system because it really seems to capture what I've been looking for in D&D. For example, where modern D&D, as well as Pathfinder, is very mechanically intricate and thematically high fantasy with superhero-style characters, magic is everywhere, magic is easy, almost everybody's a spellcaster, Dungeon Crawl Classics is mechanically more free, leaving a lot of decisions up to random tables, rather than encouraging the GM to memorize a lot of rules, and thematically, as the name implies, it's similar to the low-ish fantasy, but also kinda wacky fantasy of classic Dungeons & Dragons. In fact, the lead creator, Joseph Goodman of Goodman Games, wrote DCC based not only on early D&D, but also on the myths and novels and short stories of fantasy, horror, and even sci-fi listed in the back of the 1979 AD&D Dungeon Master's Guide, as the very source material that inspired Gary Gygax himself. Legend says, Joseph Goodman climbed into a foggy mountain range with only those books and emerged 40 days later with the original manuscript of Dungeon Crawl Classics, and probably a sick beard. But let's talk mechanics. DCC relies on a D20, of course, but oftentimes, instead of adding a numerical bonus, that bonus will be represented by +1d, meaning you use the next highest die. But Bob, the D20 is the highest die. Not anymore, my friend. In addition to your standard 7 polyhedral dice, DCC uses a D3, D5, D7, D14, 16, 24, and 30, which you can conveniently roll online by creating a room on rollfunkydice.com. But all these dice together form the dice chain, and many bonuses or penalties to rolls merely entail moving up or down the chain instead of adding or subtracting flat modifiers. Again, leading into randomization. Speaking of randomization, DCC encourages you to randomly generate 3 to 4 level 0 classless peasants per player, meaning you have a party of around 15 or 20 level 0 player characters in your first session. But don't worry, that first session is supposed to be a little wild, and by wild, I mean deadly. There are many pre-written level 0 modules, including one provided in the core rulebook, and others like that super famous one, Sailors on the Starless Sea, and these level 0 adventures are called funnels. Their very purpose is to weed out the weak and unfit random characters, leaving each player with about 1 or 2 characters that each ascend to level 1, at which point you choose their class. Of course, it also includes rules for creating level 1 characters, so you can have more of a choice in the matter, but like I've been saying, randomization is kind of the point. We'll clarify why that's so important in just a second. First, as is true for many old school RPGs, human characters can choose to become clerics, thieves, warriors, or wizards, but dwarf characters become the dwarf class. Same goes for halflings and elves. In other words, where modern high fantasy games often appear to have tons of options, but really there's always a ton of overlap between those options, looking at you, cleric, paladin, and warlock, DCC only provides the distinct archetypal options so each class feels unique. Don't get me wrong, DCC dwarves are basically fighters, but they get some really cool racial features and are better at fighting with a shield. But hear me out. DCC is not built with this myriad of choices and intricate mechanical balance. Rather, the game relies on survival of the fittest and randomization and luck and imposing those limitations in order to maintain a natural balance that the game master never has to worry about because it's all up to the dice. I like that because whether I'm the GM or a player, I personally get bogged down when I have a ton of options. The DCC completely circumvents my analysis paralysis and just lets me enjoy the game the way I like it, rolling dice with my friends. And wow, we haven't even begun to talk about the other reason this book is so massive. Over 150 pages of it are just spells, because every single spell in DCC is unique and ridiculous and takes up about a full page of text. There's a lot I could say about this magic system, but I'll just give you my biggest selling point. You know how magic is all about literally twisting the very fabric of reality to produce some desired effect? Yet in Rules as Written D&D 5e, you can literally just pop off the firebolt cantrip, just throwing magical fire from your hands with more certainty of success than throwing a rock from the ground. That has always rubbed me the wrong way, and the DCC magic system really makes magic less predictable and more exciting. Check out Jordan's second channel where he already has some videos about it. Now, honorable mentions. This first one is a little odd because the game doesn't exist yet. It's the newly announced core fantasy, aka Project Black Flag, being produced by one of the best, if not the best, third-party 5e publisher, Kobold Press. There's very little information about the system available right now, but it's already well positioned to become the Pathfinder of this generation. Plus, Kobold Press, like Goodman Games and others, are part of Paizo's united front in creating that new open license. So if nothing else, this new game, just like the others I mentioned, will belong to the community. The next honorable mention was the second most suggested RPG on that community post, and weirdly, I've never even heard of this game, so I just couldn't make it a bigger part of this video. It's Shadow of the Demon Lord. According to the comments, made by Rob Schwalb, who also worked on D&D 5e. Mechanically, it's pretty much everything D&D wishes it could be, and I absolutely love how campaigns and character progression are structured. Shadow of the Demon Lord, in my opinion, seems the best middle ground for in-depth character customization while still being quick enough to pick up for peeps who mostly just play 5e D&D. Plus, I love how the system itself encourages shorter and tighter campaigns as a DM that usually gets overwhelmed by the length of a typical D&D campaign goes for. Other replies broke down that the game only has 10 character levels, like Dungeon Crawl Classics, but folks also said that Shadow of the Demon Lord is edgy AF. However, the creator was already working on a less edgy, I suppose more generic fantasy version called Shadow of the Weird Wizard, so I'll be looking out for announcements about that. Next is my shortcut way to plug a lot of games at once. Basically, there's an entire subgenre of D&D-like RPGs collectively part of the Old School Revival or Old School Renaissance, aka the OSR. Really, the OSR spans from just playing those early editions as they were, to playing brand new games inspired by them. Dungeon Crawl Classics is one of the best known and well supported games in this category, but another very popular one is Old School Essentials, which is usually described as a clean take on the AD&D rule set, clearing up all the Gygaxian writing to make it more accessible. But another OSR game I've mentioned before, Five Torches Deep, was built to serve as a 5e player's bridge into the OSR, and I think it does that really well. Personally, though, I find it to be almost too minimal, even for my taste, but it is a great way to start exploring this category if DCC feels too different. Other OSR games worth checking out are made by other YouTube creators: Questing Beast's Knave, Runehammer's Index Card RPG, Professor DM's Deathbringer, and Arcane Library's Shadowdark, which is almost done, however, that has given the creator a chance to publish it without the OGL. With that in mind, check out this video about a very easy to learn and very funny fantasy RPG that also doesn't rely on the OGL. Then remember to like this video, share it with your game group, and consider subscribing or joining my Patreon as other great ways to support the channel. Thank you for your support, and keep building. And recording video also looks good.